So as I mentioned before in my first set of bloopers at the beginning of this stream, mat Pilates is not the only type of Pilates. Mr. Joseph Pilates, which the system is named after, yes, there is a person behind the name of this, it's not just a random word. Joseph Pilates, German immigrant, came to New York City and started up the first Pilates studio. So it's really cool to be practicing here in New York, where it really started to kick into high gear. He had a passion not just for movement and for the body, but also for inventing crazy things. He is definitely a mad scientist, and he came up with a lot of different types of apparatus to enhance the Pilates practice. So the Wunda Chair is one of the things he developed. The Reformer is also his. You're probably most familiar with the Reformer. It's very popular, especially in New York City. The Cadillac, which is basically a mat on 4 legs with crazy things hanging from it. And the Tower, which is a Cadillac without legs. So those are kind of the Fantastic Four apparatus of Pilates, of a classical practice, I guess you could say. When you walk into a Pilates studio, it definitely looks less like a gym and more kind of like a medieval torture or sex dungeon. I don't call them medieval torture devices for nothing. Most of them are made of wood. They have creaky springs attached to them, weird leather arm handles. So they are pretty fabulous because of that. It makes me love them even more, and I think it just makes them more enjoyable to use and to learn on. They're not your typical machines or equipment you're gonna find anywhere at the gym, at any other type of studio. You can get these in metal, but I purchased a wooden chair because I like the wood apparatus the best. So the Wunda Chair. The Wunda Chair, I would say, is probably the hardest apparatus to master, and I say master very loosely because I don't believe you can really master Pilates. It's always a constant learning experience. But the chair is a lot, and that's why I love it. It's a lot, and it really requires some suspension of disbelief, some finding of confidence that maybe you don't think you have, but you realize that you do. And it's a great piece to have fun on, and that's what I most love about it. I am a super geek for classical Pilates. I love getting into the nitty-gritty of the exercises and getting creative with them and playful and trying new things and innovating on them. And this is a great piece of apparatus to do so upon. The chair is, if you don't think Pilates is a full body experience, you will have a rude awakening to that on the chair. It requires every muscle in your body, and all the while it still stays core-centric. It truly is a magical piece of equipment. You'll see a lot of familiar things on this from the mat, and that's what's kind of incredible about the classical Pilates method, is all of the exercises that we do on the mat translate to the other equipment that he invented. So you'll see footwork from the Reformer on the chair, and then you can do it on the Tower and Cadillac with leg springs. You can do it on the mat with no equipment. What else? There's so many. Swan is another one that we do on all of the apparatus. You can really translate all the exercises across each apparatus, and it's really interdisciplinary and really interesting. So that's another reason why I wanted to bring my daughter Claire. Yes, that's her name, Claire the Wunda Chair. She is named after Claire Farron. If you don't know who she is, she's the greatest thing that's ever been placed on this earth. Lightning from Final Fantasy 13. for all you people that need to play that game right now. There's my aside, but wanted to bring it on, show it off, and also maybe inspire you to go take a class and try one out for yourself. So, Wunda Chair Challenge. What does that mean? So, I have a book. I have a lot of Pilates books because that's how into this I am. And this is a Wunda Chair book created by Christina Maria Gadar. She is a really cool Pilates lady on Instagram, and I can't encourage you enough to check out her work. She is really passionate about making Pilates archival and Pilates archival exercises and Pilates history more accessible to people, and demonstrating all of the exercises on all of the different apparatus. So her Instagram page is really awesome because she's building a catalog of all of the exercises and on equipment that is really beautiful. So she also writes books, and this is one of them. It's her Pilates Wunda Chair workbook, and I have it and I love it. It's 300 pages of Wunda Chair goodness, and something I always wanted to do was perform every exercise in this book, and that's what we're going to do on the stream. So we're going to start at page 1. We're going to go through the exercises, and I'm going to talk about them as I go through them. It's going to be pretty casual, me blabbering about all the different cool things you can do on the chair, and that's how these streams are going to go. So I hope you enjoy. All right, why don't we get started? I'll start with a little anatomy lesson of the chair. It's a pretty cool piece of equipment, as you can see. Here's Vanna White. Do 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 do. All right. So, anatomy of the chair, because I'm gonna start saying things that might not make sense. So, Wunda Chair. We have a pedal. So this is attached to 2 springs. You can push it down with your hands, your feet, your head. Yeah. So this is our main moving mechanism here on this chair. And that's about it. It's literally a cube with a pedal, and we push the pedal down and do things with the pedal. There are 2 springs attached to the back of Miss Claire, and each of those springs has 3 settings. If you are going to a class for the first time and you have no idea what to do, a good rule of thumb is if your feet are on the pedal, you go one of the springs on the top, one of the springs on the bottom. Your hands are on the pedal, you just have one on one middle. And that's pretty baseline for most chairs. So like I said before, my chair is a Peak Pilates chair. That's the company that made this specific apparatus. It's the chair that I trained on when I was working towards becoming a Pilates teacher. And I fell in love with this specific design, so I purchased it myself. It was the most expensive thing I've ever purchased in my entire life, but I don't regret it. It's a wonderful addition to my apartment. There are a lot of different types of chairs, different styles designed by different companies. You'll see wooden designs, you'll see ones made out of metal, you'll see wireframe designs where it's just, there's a lot more negative space in the chair. You'll see metal springs, you'll see nylon cords, you'll see Balanced Body makes a chair where you have 2 sets of cords, ones that are lighter, one that are heavy. So it really depends on the brand that you like, the studio that you like. It doesn't change the exercises. It's more just if you're swapping between different types of chairs, knowing which resistances work for you. I personally like the Peak model because it's more reminiscent of his original Wunda Chair design, and I like how unfussy it is because you only have the 2 springs. I I don't need all the cords and swapping cords out. This is enough for me. There's enough to practice on the chair where I don't need any more bells and whistles. I like the simple but effective nature of this design. So we have our pedal, we have our springs. The top, when I teach, I either call it the cushion or sometimes I'll call it the mat because everything's a mat to a Pilates teacher that's cushioned. So if I say mat, I mean the cushion on top of the chair. And that's really it. And that's what's really incredible about Wunda chairs is there's really not much to them. It's a straightforward design. It's easy to use. I actually prefer to put beginners on the chair for certain exercises than the reformer, which might sound a little crazy to any teachers watching, but the reformer's got a lot of moving parts. You've got a moving platform, you've got 4 or 5 sets of springs at different resistances, there's arm handles, there's boxes, there's all of these things, foot bars, etc., etc., etc. It can be a little overwhelming for a beginner or if you're just starting out. The chair, while it's a little harder on the body, I like how easy it is to use. You change the springs, you sit on it, you stand next to it. It's a little more digestible. It's a little less overwhelming when you're first starting out. But it is definitely spicy. And that's a great segue into getting started. So, I don't know if it's too dark in here. If you have any feedback, let me know. I try to create some ambiance in here with my galaxy lights, but if you can't see what I'm doing, let me know. I will turn on some lights. So, our first exercise, I think, is footwork. So footwork is a classic warm-up across all Pilates apparatus, and we also do it on the mat. Yes, that is correct. Footwork sitting is what it's called in her book. So yes, footwork is a classic warm-up for Wunda Chair. It's a classic warm-up on reformer. I do it a lot as a warm-up on the mat. It's really quick and dirty, get you thinking about all of the right muscles that you'll need to start your practice. So, let's begin. So for footwork, since our feet are going to be on the pedal, you bring your spring set, whatever that looks like for you. You can hear how creaky she is. She needs a little oil. So I've got my springs on one top and one bottom. They're all hooked up. And then I'm just going to sit on my chair. Look at that, so easy. I'm going to bump that back, actually. I'm sitting on my chair. Oh yeah, now I'm under the lights. There we go. I'm getting the hang of this Twitch thing. Let me know if I'm getting the hang of it. So you come to sit on your chair. Now this is where things get slightly more intense. If you're a first-time chair user or need a little more support, you can sit a little further back on your seat for footwork. If you want to really spice this up, you're going to sit incredibly close to the edge of the seat. So my sit bones, the bony landmarks in my booty, they are right at the edge of the chair right now. The closer you are to the edge, the more narrow the space between your thighs and your chest is, which means your hip flexors are going to work a lot more, and your core is going to have to really fire on to help keep the alignment of your spine. So with that, I'll take a step back and show you just kind of basic footwork here. So I tend to do footwork right at the edge because I love to spice it up. And then I bring my heels together, toes apart, up onto the chair. So my toes are on the chair, my heels are lifted just slightly. We have a slight high heel on our foot bar here. And then your knees will open the width of your shoulders. So from here, you have a lot of different options for arms. If this is your first time or you feel like you need a little more stability, hands can come to the back of the chair. I like this position personally because we spend so much time rounded. It really forces you to open the chest and get a little extension here. You can bring your hands to the sides and just do a light press with the palms onto the sides of the chairs. The arms can come to a diagonal, a little more complicated, a little more spicy. Or the most advanced for the arms, the hand stack one on top of the other behind the head. Now you can already see here, I don't have a back to this chair, but I have to pretend that I do. So thinking about the ring of the hips, the ring of the ribs, ring of the crown of the head lining up in concentric circles. And that's where you stay the whole time. So all you do for footwork, keeping your upper body still, you press your pedal down, we go about halfway, and then bring it back up. Inhale, press down. Exhale, lift up. You do this 5 times, and the whole time, you're thinking about not shifting in the pelvis. So what we don't want to do is the pedal presses down, maybe we go backwards, or we start to slouch, and then the pedal zips up, and we're all out of whack. The pelvis is especially going to want to draw back when the legs come up, especially if you're more towards the edge, because you have less room for that hip crease. It's going to be really tight. When you're further back, you get a little bit more air here to make that happen. And that's where the challenge comes in. You want to think about your thigh bones as you lift up the pedal. The thigh bones slide back and up into your core, and that's where the engagement comes from. A lot of Pilates instructors, we say move the legs from your core. But what does that actually mean? It sounds very conceptual because it is. Footwork really helps you feel that more than any other exercise, I would say. Footwork on the chair really requires you to move your legs from your core. And it's that feeling of having the thigh bones draw in and up. You have to find that zipper from your pubic bone to the bottom of your breastbone, and you find that drawing together and zip up of your abs to bring the legs up. You can kind of see the difference. This is me solely moving with my legs. You see how I'm shifting in the pelvis? My body's getting thrown around. I'm just pressing with my legs. Now I'm moving them with my abs. My rhythm is a lot more even, and my posture is a lot more stable. Still moving pretty quickly, but the stability is coming from my center. 2 more, and 1 more. And then you lower down, shake it out. So that's kind of your foundation for your footwork. So thinking of sitting tall on that chair, trying not to shift side to side, forward or back, shoulders back, finding that neutral spine that we talk about on the mat, but taking it from a supine position and bringing it up to a seated position. Isn't that cool? So footwork continues. So we have feet in Pilates stance, right? So heels together, toes apart. Then we move to arches. This looks a little different. So the middle of your feet, your arches, they come to the foot bar, and your legs zip together. So the key here is to keep the ankles and the knees together for the duration of the exercise. Long tops of the feet here, we say images like a bird on a perch or kind of like a hook over the foot bar. And you do the same thing, 5 for precision and 5 for flow. Pressing it down halfway and then lifting it up. Trying to keep the knees glued together and the ankles glued together the whole time that you move. Now this is really harder than it looks. I find that arches specifically really fires on your hamstrings because you not only want to think pressing down with your legs, but also drawing the pedal in towards you, especially on that lift up. So you're not only pressing down with a lot of force, but you're also dragging in and out. Kind of like if you do hills in your spin class, they say drag the pedal as you when you have a lot of resistance. It's kind of a similar feeling. I feel kind of a push and pull as much as a down and an up. So same thing here. You do 10, 5 for precision, 5 for flow. And then you move to your heels. So heels walk to your foot bar. You flex your feet. Your legs still stay zipped together. This is really spicy. and then you just go 10 for flow. We skip the precision. We've done enough precision. We're not necessarily done with technique, but we're done moving slow. And then you just pump away, keeping all of those principles in mind. For 3, 2, and 1. And then you can just take a moment and breathe. I forgot to mention, I mentioned all the arms except the genie arms. So, as I mentioned, you can bring your hands to the back of the chair, you can bring them to the sides, high diagonal, hands behind your head, but then there's also the genie. This is the forearms stacked one on top of the other, and you hold your arms in front of you while you perform footwork. This is very classical, so if you see some pictures of Pilates in the studio, back when he had his studio in New York, you'll see this happening a lot. It's very classical, but also really gets you firing on the lats in the back. So finding a little bit of a press on the forearms to help fire up the upper part of your trunk. Pretty cool stuff. So that's footwork. That's what you do for warm-up. If you've done reformer, it's similar. And then what does Miss Gadar have us doing next? So we did our footwork, we did our warm-up. We move on to what she likes to call standing footwork. I know it as tendon stretch and running, which are reformer terms. So with this one, you come to stand. This is designed to give you a little bit of a stretch for the calves after all of that work. And you also start to fire on the core muscles that you'll need for more spinal flexion exercises as we go through kind of all the exercises. So the shape that we're going to find here is going to look very similar to a lot of exercises we're going to do, specifically the pull-up, which I don't know if we're going to get to today. So, I'm jumping the gun, I'm getting very excited. So, mounting the chair. Be careful. Some people wear bar socks. I'm kind of a really old school classic person. I go barefoot. I go barefoot on the reformer. I go barefoot on the Wunda Chair. I don't have the same contact or connection to the equipment when I have like grippy socks on, and also the grippy socks kind of bother me. I like to be able to splay my toes and get that extra foot mobility. It just makes me feel a little more integrated and connected to the machine. But you can do this with bar socks. I take class and teach people that use the bar socks, and it's totally fine. Works for them. If it works for you, do it. So, mounting the chair. This is the way that you will mount anytime we are facing it and maybe we're going to be standing up on it or having to put our hands on the back. So with most Pilates apparatus, the first thing you do is bring your hands to the back of your chair. You can bring them all the way to the back, or you can bring them to the sides. I would recommend just bringing them to the back. You want your thumbs with your fingers, so all 10 fingertips are pointing away from you. And then from here, you take one foot, you press the pedal all the way down. Then from here, you take your foot that's on the floor, bring it up on to the pedal. So now we have safely mounted the chair. Getting off, you get off the way you came. One foot comes to the floor. You close the spring or lift the pedal up with the other foot. You take that other foot off, so both feet come off first, and then you bring your hands off. So hands are the first thing on, hands are the last thing off. One foot, you never have no feet on. Make sure you're paying attention when you're getting on and off because you're working with springs. We don't want to lose limbs here. So we'll start. Hands on. One foot on the pedal, we press it all the way down. Make sure it's all the way down. And then bring your other foot on. And we're ready to go. So for our tendon stretch, we're going to find that Pilates stance. Heels together, toes apart at about 11 and 1 on the clock. So it's a little bit of an opening. We're not in the Russian ballet, so we don't need to be incredibly turned out here. So I like to say 11 and 1 on the clock is a good image to think about with that. We're going to find that same lift of the heels that we found in footwork, so this should already look pretty familiar. From here, this is where we start to find our spinal flexion shape. So from here, you want to think about lifting the ribs from the hips and then drawing your waist into that space. So you're almost finding a candy cane shape here, or kind of like the top of a Bo Peep staff. if that's an image for you that works. You want to think less rounding in the shoulders and more rounding through the middle of your back. So the pelvis draws forward towards the front of that chair. You lift the ribs from your hips, you dive your waist back, your shoulder blades glide down your back. So it's easy here when you round to want to throw the shoulders forward and shrug towards your ears, like I'm doing right now. But from here, you want to think shoulders down the back, and you lift more from the abs and draw the pelvis forward. From here, you want to press evenly into your hands, but think more to the outside edge of the hands so that you keep those shoulder blades gliding down the back. So it's easy to kind of shrug the shoulders in this position. Think of the shoulder blades gliding down the back and more towards the pinky side edges of your hands. So this is your rounded position. It's hard to hold. That's the point. You feel weight in your hands, you feel a little forward, and that's what you want. Your feet should feel fairly light on this pedal, like you could just lift it up. That's what you're looking for. Let's take a moment to hang over and relax. So that's the position you're looking for. It's very intense. You can think of it like roll up on the mat. Kind of that position that we find as we're rolling up and rolling down. It's like your middle position in your roll up. This is where everything starts to come together, right? So from here, you find that rounded position, and then all you do for your tendon stretch, keeping that shape in your upper body, you just lower your heels towards the ground. Get a little stretch, and then lift them up. Lower your heels, and lift. Now as you do this, you want to keep that shape in your spine, and same thing, thinking about moving the legs from your abs. So you lift your abs up to the ceiling to lift your heels up. And then you deepen your scoop, draw your pelvis forward to lower the heels down. You lift the middle of your back to lift your heels. You lift your abs away from the floor and press your pelvis towards the mat. So it's a very deep engagement through your waist and a little bit of a shoulder warm-up. We work our shoulders like crazy on the Wunda Chair. You can add some tempo to this. Lift for 3 and lower. Lift and lower, and then reverse. Up, lower. If that was the reverse. And that's your tendon stretch. Close my spring here. You can say lift the pedal, or I sometimes say close your springs when it's time to lift the pedal up. Let's get back on. Getting on safely. And then we go for a little run. So same thing, heels together, toes apart. You can also do this parallel. You just bend one knee, let the heel sink towards the floor, and lift up and switch. And lift up and switch. And up and switch. And up and switch. You can find that round position here, but more often than not, I use running when I teach chair as kind of a rest moment. So I tend to find a little bit of a flat back and just let my students relish in the calf stretch here. And then you can let one heel hang under. This feels so good. Switching sides. And then just both. You can even hang a little forward. Oh, feels so good. And then slowly dismount your chair. One foot comes down. You close the spring with control. Foot comes down, and then your hands come off. So safe. Safety Town. I'm from Long Island. Does anyone know what Safety Town is? They're back in business. I just saw an article about it. All right, what's next in our book? The 100. Of course, there are some Pilates instructors that I know that say it's not a Pilates class if you don't do the 100. We'll see about that. We'll see what all of you think. We're gonna add a little bit more light here. So the 100, you can do the 100 on the chair. It's really hard on the chair. Nothing's easy on the chair. I'll swing it around so you can better see. So there are 2 ways that you can do this exercise on here. The most common way is laying down on the cushion long ways. So that looks like this. You just sit at the edge and then come all the way down to your back. Now this is why it's hard, because on the mat we can just lay our head down and it'll support us, but clearly we don't have that here. So the more you sink backwards, the more core you have to use to get up. So this is why this is a level up from the mat. You also don't have a lot of room for your tail. So I like just fit on this, kind of sort of fit. That's the point. They don't want you to like fully fit on it because it's got to be hard and we got to hold ourselves up with our abs, right? So this is the position that you're in. You're in your Pilates curl. You make sure that your tail is down. Sometimes in class we'll do some crunches before we start. So finding that full extension and then coming all the way up into a crunch. Very spicy. I actually kind of like these. They make me feel stronger than I am. I feel pretty cool when I do these. You can lift your legs to a tabletop. Sometimes we'll do marches like we do on the mat. You can do your mat footwork, so your frogs, your Pilates stance, your arches, and your heels, keeping your curl up. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do off of this chair. The other way that you can mount this thing to do the 100, which is, I've done it before, and I only do it when either I'm having a bad day and I want to make it worse, or I really want to challenge myself. So you can lie down on the chair the other way, on the short way, so that you have less room and you have to keep yourself up even more so with your muscles. So same thing, you lie down like so, and this is all you've got. And then it doesn't matter if you're short ways or long ways, the 100 works the same. Legs come out to your high diagonal, and you start to pump 10 breaths. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can lower the legs as you see fit. It's a lot harder to do that on the short side, all the while trying to keep your head up. And that's enough of that. Come off with some grace and beauty, and that's your 100. You can some classes on Wunda Chair, they'll also incorporate mat, so you might do the 100 on a mat. Be very grateful to your instructor for doing that. But I like doing the 100 on the chair. It's a really good test to see how strong your Pilates curl actually is. The mat can give you a lot of support, which is important, and what you need when you're learning, and what you need for certain exercises. But it's also good to kind of throw yourself into the deep end of the pool and really see if you're using the right muscles to keep yourself up. And the chair will definitely tell you. She's cruel that way. Next one is standing push down. This is a great one. Standing push down is something that you'll do in most chair classes. And there's a couple different ways you can do it, and I'll demo the 3 different ways that you can do it. If she's got more options in here, I'm excited to learn them myself. But I'll show you the 3 most common ways that we do standing push down, or the push down exercise in classes. All right, so from here, when you're standing in, oh, I forgot. I get so excited, I forget to change my springs. So this one, our hands are going to be on the pedal, so that means we have to swap our springs. So I have come to one middle spring, and then the other spring is just off. So the other spring is just sitting on the pedal itself, and I have the one connected to the middle hook. So one middle spring is fairly light. It's a good start for upper body. Sometimes I have clients that they really want to do upper body and they want more weight on their springs for arms, and then they do one middle spring and they're feeling the heat. So don't underestimate just having one spring on. I keep cutting my head off. Today's just not my cinematography day. That's okay. So when you're standing in front of the chair, more often than not, you want to stand your foot's distance away from the chair. So that means you line up your toes to that platform. For me, it's a wooden platform. And then you just step back, and there you go. Your foot's distance. Not a foot, not 12 inches, your foot. Heels together, toes apart in your Pilates stance at 11 and 1 on the clock. And from here, you find that same stack that you did seated. You see how we're taking everything into different positions. So you find that neutral position, those concentric circles of your torso lining up. And I always encourage people here to take a soft bend of the knees. It's easy to hyperextend through the knees and really throw the backs of the knees behind you. And when you do that, you arch your back and maybe you shift forward, and now we're out of alignment. Having that soft bend in your knees, it doesn't have to be a crazy amount, just a touch, gives you a little more mobility in your pelvis to be able to shift your pelvis forward and back to find that alignment and that zip up through your center. So from here, with that soft bend in your knees, you take an inhale, bring your arms up to the ceiling. Exhale, forward fold, chin to chest until your hands find the pedal. All right, heel of the hand, so this part of your hand, is on the pedal. And now remember that zip up position that we did during tendon stretch, that candy cane looking shape? We find it here. We're taking those shapes into our exercises. So really lifting that waist up. If you're doing this correctly, your weight is going to feel really forward. Like most of your weight, I'd say about 70% of your weight is going to be on towards the pedal. That's what you want, because if the weight's more forward, you really have to use your abs for suspension. I like to describe your navel here, your belly button, as being a number 5 on the dice. So if your hands and your feet are the number 4, you kind of want to think of your navel being smack dab in the middle of that number 4. And that means you really got to work your center to stay lifted here. And we do the same thing that we did in tendon stretch, but with the arms. You lift your abs, press the pedal down halfway, and then lift it all the way up. Lift your abs to lift your arms. So you can see I'm not bending the elbows here to come up. We don't want to do that. Arms stay straight, no bending. They're kind of just there to keep the pedal from slapping us in the face. We use our core to lift, to bring ourselves up. And if you feel like you're shifting backwards, draw yourself more forward. Use your core to lift yourself up. I like to think in this exercise that you're dragging your pelvis and the pedal towards each other. From here, we get to do a little challenge. So you come down halfway and hold. Keep that lift in your spine, that roundness in your back. Shoulder blades down. I had to correct myself there. And now you pump the pedal. So what we don't want to do here is let it go and have a flat back. We want to keep that lift, and that's what brings the pedal towards us. We also lose that weight, so now we have to use our core to make sure we don't fall forward. Let's just do 2. Last one. To dismount, come back the way you came. All the way up through tall. You stick the landing, Simone Biles. And that's your standing push down. Doesn't look like much, but it's a lot. Yes, I am ready for battle. This is my Vegeta tank top. Thank you for noticing. He's my favorite. He should be everyone's favorite. You want entertainment, you put some Vegeta on. Sometimes when I'm down, I just watch Vegeta clips and I just feel so much better, despite the crazy things that he says. So I like to wear my Vegeta tank top too when I do the chair, because I need that Super Saiyan energy. I really need it for some of these crazy exercises. So kneeling push down. So we did the standing version. There's a kneeling version of this. This one is really hard. It's not my favorite because it's really hard, but that means I just have to do it more. So this one you actually come to kneel on the chair, and now my head's cut off. Winning the Oscar for Twitch streaming cinematography, everyone. You want your knees inner hip width distance apart. So what that means is you find the bony landmarks of your hips, you follow that line down, and that's your inner hip width. It's a little bit different than finding the width of your silhouette, which would be the outsides of your hips. So it's a little bit more narrow. You want to find the middle of the chair. And same thing here, ring of the hips, ribs, crown of the head, line up. You take the forward fold kneeling. Your arms come up to the ceiling. You forward fold and find the pedal. Now the hard part about this, and I'm not doing a good job right now because it's hard, you want to try to not shift yourself back to find the pedal. So you see how my butt went back as I put my hands on? You want to try to keep your thighs and your pelvis long and forward the whole time. Maybe I need to take it back a little bit. Sometimes this takes adjusting. You don't want to shift your booty back if you can. Woo! And your hands find the pedal. So same thing. You want to feel like your weight is forward, like you're going to fall forward. That's what you want. Press your shins into the chair. Find that lift with the ribs. Press into the pinky side edges of the hands so that we don't shrug the shoulders towards the ears. Gaze down towards your abdominals, and then from here, lift your abs to the ceiling. The pedal presses down, and then you lift to bring it up. There's also a bit of a drag of the pedal towards the chair. So as you lower down, you feel this dragging inward. And that engagement of your pelvis and the pedal dragging towards each other encourages more of a lift from your waist. We can also take those arm presses here, bending and straightening. Woo! Really hard. 1. Come all the way up the way you came. I'm gonna blow it. And then bringing your arms down and trying to dismount with grace and beauty. That's your kneeling push down. It's really hard. Like I said before, the chair is a really good way to play with those more conceptual, to really realize those more conceptual things that maybe instructors will say to you. Like, you know, move your legs with your abs, or, you know, finding those weird opposition cues that you might get from instructors sometimes, like reach your legs long in one direction but your arms long in the other, or wide collarbones and feel like the wrap of your scapulas from your back to your front. Sometimes we can get a little conceptual and maybe a little anatomical, and it can be a little bit like, where am I supposed to feel this? The chair is really going to put you in those positions where you're really going to start to make the connections between that more conceptual, thinking really inward to your body and making it happen physically and really understanding what's happening there. I've had a lot of big epiphanies on the chair, kind of just playing around and thinking about things that I've heard in class, and then realizing, oh, that's what that's supposed to feel like when I brought myself onto the chair. So I think that's pretty cool. What's next? I think we have time for a few more, and then I probably should go to bed because I have a job to go to in the morning. Oh, spine stretch. Interesting. I didn't think she'd go with this one next. Very exciting. All right, so spine stretch forward. This is another mat exercise that we do all the time. Very classical mat exercise. It's definitely a fan favorite, I would say, with my students and my clients. I think it's an exercise that is totally underrated and is another one that can be done easily be done incorrectly and the chair will help you get there to make it feel less like a stretch, like a static stretch, which tends to be what happens, and more of an ab exercise and a back exercise. It's similar to scissors. Scissors is when you're bringing your legs forward and back. It's easy for that to be, done as more of a flexibility type of movement when it's actually more of a core exercise. The same thing happens with spine stretch forward. So this one you actually sit in front of the chair. You don't sit on the chair, so it's kind of funny that way. So I'm going to try to adjust this. My cinematography is so good. I should sit classically. So here's another fun fact about Pilates. There's a certain way to sit. This is definitely more within the classical repertoire. There's this whole, more classical to Joseph Pilates books that he's written and more contemporary stuff. I don't care about any of that. I care about moving my body. I don't really care about classical or contemporary. But if you go to a studio that's labeled classical, you'll most likely sit and stand up in this fashion. But for me, I don't care. We're moving our body. I don't care if it's classical or contemporary. It doesn't make a difference to me. It's all good stuff. So from here, to sit classically, you're going to find that genie position with your arms, so one forearm on top of the other. From here, you take any leg that you'd like. I'm going to use my right leg, and you're going to slip it behind your left leg. From here, you slowly slide that leg past and behind while lowering your booty to come to sit down on the floor. It kind of looks like you're going for a curtsy, but then you go to sit. You sit up the same way. So you would cross one leg on top of the other, you would genie your arms, press forward, and you slide the leg and come up. So that's how you get down on the floor, and that's how you get up classically. So we'll sit again. I'll try and use my weaker side, so my left foot will slide, and we'll come down. You can see that's my weak side. And then we just unravel. And then we straddle our chair like the classy people we are. So I'm still on one middle spring here because my hands are coming onto the chair. And I'm straddling the chair. Based on the design of my chair, I don't have my feet right up on it. They're a little wider. They're about the width of the platform that is mounted to the chair. What's more important is that you're able to put the heels of your hands onto your pedal. So the heel of your hand is that lower part. You're able to bring your hands there. So from here, you're going to feel maybe a little forward and a little less back. That is totally where you want to be. It might not feel right, but that's where you want to be. Slightly tilted forward. You want that long spine. You're seated right on your sits bones, those bony landmarks in your booty. And this can get a little tight in the hip flexors and the hamstrings if the flexibility department is on vacation. So if you're feeling a little tight, take a bend to the knees. It gives you a little more freedom to be able to move about and adjust accordingly in this position. You can also sit on a yoga block or a book. I could grab any of these books from my shelf here and sit on it. That's going to give you a little more space in the hips and the hamstrings to be able to find that long spine position. Because if we're rounded and our shoulders are to our ears or we're slouching, it defeats the point of what we're trying to do. So find that long spine. You've got a lot of different options, and that's what's really great about Pilates too. You can really adjust it to where your body is at today, this year, this month, this week. Pilates is great. Did everyone know that? Pilates is great. So, spine stretch forward. Let's just get to the exercise, girl. Let's do it. So feet are flexed, long spine, arms are straight. Arms don't go anywhere. We don't bend at the elbows. We don't flop the elbows open. No spaghetti wrists. Stiff arms. Long collarbones. Little warm up here. What we're going to do is take a couple of presses of the pedal down. So you take an inhale to prep, exhale, press the pedal down, and then lift it up and press it down. Now you'll notice as I press down, I'm not bending the elbows, and I'm using my back more to activate the movement here. So where you really want to feel this is underneath your arm, like you're squeezing a lemon under your armpit. So getting more of the lat and the back involved. So instead of throwing it down with the top of your arm, or using your forearm to help you get it down, it's kind of what's happening here. It's a little bit of a different force. You want to think of squeezing under your arms and moving your arms from your back. So my shoulder blades are squeezing together and my collarbones are widening, and then I release. Shoulder blades glide down the back. I squeeze under the armpits to move the arms, and then they lift up. I have no tension in my arms at all. They're literally hanging out there. My shoulder is working a little to stabilize the position of my arm, but it's not the prime mover here. Let's take that again. And you'll notice as I press down, my spine doesn't move. There's that core enacting. So thinking about growing taller as you press the pedal down and lifting it up. We start halfway, but if you can, you bring it all the way down, and you can lift it all the way up. The key is to not sink as you press down and bear down. You want to think lifting the ribs from the hips as you press this down. That's going to come into play when we do spine stretch, the full exercise, which is what we're going to do now. I'm so good at these segues. So from here, you press your pedal down and you lift the ribs from your hips. Find that length in your waist. Then you find a little bit of a Pilates curl forward. So you lift and round forward. So now my upper back is finding more of that roundness. My lower back is still glued to that imaginary wall behind me. From here, keep the pedal pressing down. You lift your center and then release the bar. So it's a little bit of a crunch action. From here, you press down, you grow taller. You lift up and over. Kind of like you're arcing over. Lift your abs. Lift your pedal. That doesn't look like there's a lot going on, but there is. You can start to advance it by pressing the pedal all the way down. You round over. You see how I'm not shifting forward? It's more of a lift from the back and the abs. I find that flat back and I lift it up. One more time. Press it down. Nice wide collarbones. Rounding forward. My knees are staying up towards the ceiling. They're not flopping open. Lift and lift. So pretty cool exercise. Spine stretch forward when we do it just on the mat. If you've taken class with me before, it's that similar motion of rounding forward and stacking the spine up. But we can easily turn that into a stretching exercise where we kind of just hang out, and now it's kind of like a pancake stretch or a seated forward fold. We want to think of it as a core exercise. So we're lifting the ribs from the hips. We press down on our imaginary pedal and we round forward and then lift with the abs to come up. It can be stretchy, and there is stretch as a part of the exercise, but that's not primarily what it's designed to do. It's designed to strengthen our back, to find mobility in our spine, and to work on better posture, specifically in our upper body, and strengthening that waist area, especially that middle back. We need to give that middle back some love. All right, let me classically get up.